Namaste Node.js Season 2 and we are building Dev Tinder. In this episode, we are going to continue building this application. We will continue to build new APIs. We will continue to upgrade our APIs and do a lot more things inside database, inside APIs and write a lot of code. Okay. Hope you are excited just like I am. So let us just start without wasting any time. In the previous episode, I was building this sign up API. In this sign up API, the user can enter his first name, last name, email ID, password, and and then we created a new instance of the user model. Remember, this is a very important, you should know the lingo also. When I'm saying schema, what do I mean by schema? When I say a model, what do I mean by a MongoDB model, right? Or a Mongoose model, right? And when I say I'm creating a new instance of a model, what do I mean by that? So this terminology, these nomenclature, you should know it properly so that you can communicate what you are writing effectively. Okay, so this is very, very important. Listen to me. Over here, we created a new instance of the user model, right? And we passed this data into it, right? And this data, and then we did a await user.save. And when I saved this, so a new document was collected into the user collection in the Dev Tinder database. So this is the database, this is the collection, this is the document. And these are the fields that were added. Two fields were automatically added by MongoDB, ID and underscore V and underscore ID, right? These are automatically added by MongoDB. And these four fields were added by us. Okay, so this is what we were doing. Now let us just improve our code. Right now we are hard coding this up, right? Remember, right now we are hard coding this up. Suppose if I want to add one more user, okay, let us add MS Dhoni over here, right? Let's add MS Dhoni. Let's add first name is MS, then I can say it's Dhoni, and then I can say my bad, okay, and then I can say MS Dhoni @gmail.com. Okay, let's keep gmail.com and let's change the password to Dhoni, right? Dhoni bhai. Okay, so let us change this password to this user. Now, how did we call this API? We just have to make a post API call from the postman to the sign up API and send this response. And then it says user added successfully. That means our operation was perfectly successfully valid and the data would have been updated in the database. So if I refresh my database, you will see fetching documents, you will see MS Dhoni added over here. But this data cannot be hard coded, right? This data, we need a user to fill this data in a HTML form and then send us the data in an API and we get this data and then push it into the database, right? We have to make this data dynamic. So what we will do is, instead of writing this data over here, I want my data to be sent inside this API while I am making a post call. So I should send the data right from here, right? I should send the data right from here. And then my API should receive that data and push it into the database, right? This is what we will do now, right? This is our first task of the day, right? Let us just pass dynamic data into our API. How do you do that? First of all, in the postman, if you will go ahead over here in the, see, this is the request. This top portion is the request and below portion is the response. So in this top portion, go to body. So this is the request body, okay, and this is the HTTP method, this is the URL, and this is the body. Now if I click on this body, so there are different ways I can send data inside the API, right? I can either send a form data, either I can send the raw data, I can send the binary data, I can call the GraphQL APIs by using the GraphQL queries and something, right? Postman gives you a lot of feature. But we want to keep our APIs very simple. We want to send a JSON data to my backend, right, to my server, and my server should read that JSON data and then push it into the database, right? This is all we want. I want to send JSON data. My server should read that JSON data and push it into the database. And this is the best way of handling things up, right? So this is how is the you will, if you'll go in the industry and if you'll work for companies, this is the standard way of handling the request and response to send the data. It's used, right? JSON is the most widely used nomenclature, right? You can send data in a lot of ways, but JSON is the thing. So over here in Postman, go over here, go to raw, right? Raw. Now you can select a lot of forms, right? You can either send that raw data in text, you can send the raw data in JavaScript, you can send the raw data in JSON, you can send the raw data in HTML, XML. XML was used widely before JSON, right? Before JSON came into picture, people used to use XML to to send data and receive data, right? That was the major way of storing data, right? But now since JSON has come in, right, it works very well, and JSON is the primary and a standard way of passing data. Okay, so let us just select JSON over here. So go to body, go to raw, go to JSON. Now over here I can pass some JSON object, right? I can just pass some JSON object. Don't confuse this with the JavaScript object. JSON object, this is JSON, right? A lot of developers I know don't even know the meaning between difference between JSON and JavaScript. Let me give you as a homework, right? Let me give you, this is an opportunity for me to give you this homework. What is the difference between JavaScript and JSON, right? JavaScript object and JSON. Some people think that JS object is exactly same as JSON, right? Difference between the two, right? Difference. You should know the difference. A lot of people don't know the difference. Don't know the difference. I'm not explaining it right now, otherwise this video will become like 2 hours long. But what I want is all the students who are watching this video should know the difference between JSON object and JavaScript object and JSON, sorry, right? And they should know exactly what is JSON, what is JavaScript object. Are they you cannot use these words interchangeably, right? You cannot use those words interchangeably, okay? Remember that. Cool. So just go figure that out. But let me send this dynamic data from here. Suppose if I want to send first name, right? And then I want to send, see, this is over here, right? Over here, if I copy this, this is what? Is this a JSON or not? Tell me. Is this a JSON or not? A lot of people are saying JSON, but this is not JSON. This is a JavaScript object, okay? And if you will copy it directly over here, it will not work. The reason is JSON always need the key value pairs as string. It cannot take it like this. But JavaScript object, this is not a string. This is a key. This is not a string. In JSON, this key is also a string, right? There are a lot more differences between JavaScript object and JSON, but this is one of it, right? And just find it out, but I am just copying, pasting this so that my work becomes a little easier. Now I will send this dynamic data from my API in form of a JSON, right? And let us take one more example, right? Let's say Rohit Sharma, right? Let me add one more player over here, rohit@gmail.com, and let's say rohit@123 is the password. And now see, JavaScript object can take a comma over here, JSON cannot, okay? So there are very small minute differences between the two, right? And they can be interchanged easily, okay? Interchanged easily. That is why, JavaScript objects and JSON works very well together, right? If I am sending the JSON over here, so this can be converted to JavaScript object very easily, right? It is very easy to convert it because there is very subtle difference, but still they are different. You should know why, why both of them are used, right? And when you should use what, and what is actually the difference between JSON and JavaScript object, okay? You should know it, right? It's very, very important. Now I am sending this data. Now I want to send this data, right? I want to send this data and I want to receive this data over here and then save it onto the UI. How will I do that? How will I do that? How will I do that? First of all, let me comment everything down. I want to just show you how to, I will uncomment it, but I just want to focus upon reading the request first of all, right? I don't want to send anything, but can I just console log request, right? Can I just console log this request over here, right? and let us see if we get the data or not. Okay, let us just console log the request over here. And if I just make this, let me click on send, what will happen now? Can you guess? It will go into an infinite loop or something, right? Because we are not sending any response back, isn't it? Right? Let us click on send and it is just waiting for response now. But if you'll go in the console and see, we have got a lot of things over here. We have got a lot of things. So what I am trying to say is that, you know, when I say REQ, this REQ is the request. This is the whole request that Postman has sent to us, and server has received this request, and this request, Express has converted this request into an object and it has given to us to use it, right? And the data that you sent over here is also a part of this request, right? The data that you sent over here is also a part of this request. Okay, if you'll see, this is a very big request over here, but you cannot read the data directly from here. You cannot read the data directly from here. But I wanted to show you that, see, this is the request object, right? This is the incoming message, and this is kind of like a readable stream, right? You are just reading it. Remember, there is a readable stream. The data is sent in chunks. Similarly, this is kind of like a a request object, and now I want to read that data which is present on the body of this request, where it is present on the body of the request. Okay, so how to use it? To access the body of this request, I can just do request.body. But will it give me the request now, right? Will it give me the data? Let me just show it to you. Let me just save the file. Okay, let us just save the file. Let's go back, right? See, the socket hanged up, right? And there is some problem, but let us make this API call once again, right? Let us make this API call. Now it went again and it says undefined. Now I am getting the body as undefined. Why? My request body is undefined. Ideally, in my body, I have sent this JSON data. Why it is coming undefined over here? The reason is that the request, the data which is being sent over here is being sent in JSON format, and our server is not able to read that JSON data. Our server is not able to read that JSON data. To read that JSON data, we will need help of a middleware. Now we will need a middleware which can, and why I am saying a middleware, because I will have to use it for all my APIs, right? I need a middleware that can just check the incoming request and convert the JSON into the JSON, right? Into the, it can just read that JSON, convert it into a JavaScript object, put it into the body, and can give us access to that data over here. I would need a way, and I will need a middleware, right? And let me tell you that there is already a middleware. This is very famous and it is given to us by Express itself, right? There is a middleware which is given to us by Express itself, and it is known as Express JSON, right? Express JSON middleware, right? Express JSON middleware. Let us just go and see. Do we have Express JSON middleware? Yep, this is, right? So this is the method, right? Express.json. This middleware is available in Express version 4.16 onwards, right? So Express, this was a major concern when we used to develop applications using Express, that, okay, if we want to read some JSON, I can write my own middleware, or I have to rely on some random third-party middlewares. But now Express is giving you this middleware directly in the Express library, so we can just directly use it. Okay, so let us just use this Express JSON, right? How do you use a middleware? Do you know this? How do you use a middleware? Right? How do you use a middleware? The answer is you create a app.use, isn't it? Remember, how do you use a middleware? You use app.use. And now what I have to do is I have to just say express.json, and that's it. Our middleware will now be, will now be activated for all the routes. My middleware will now be activated for all the routes. Do you remember the use of this use method, app.use? If I pass in a function, let me just revise it if you have forgotten it. If I pass a function over here, right, what will happen? This function, this request handler will run on every request that comes to our server, isn't it? That is what the definition of use is. If I give it some route, over here, sorry, my bad. If I give it some route over here, if I say /test, right? Then this route handler will only work for this URL. If I give it some method, maybe if I say get, post or something, so it will only work for get plus this URL. But if I just write app.use and I don't give any route and I pass a function over here, so it will work for all the routes automatically. Isn't it? Do you know that? Right? It is that simple and that easy. Right? So similarly, the logic of handling that request and processing that JSON data, right, is done by this middleware, right? And this is the code Express team has written for you. You just have to include this middleware and everything is sorted in your life. You don't have to worry about reading the JSON file differently or anything about it, right? So that is why I say the concept of middlewares in Node.js, or I would say Express framework, has made our life very, 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 very easy. That is why Express is so popular. Why is MERN so popular? MongoDB, Express, React, and Node, they all work very well together. Right? So MongoDB works very well with JavaScript object. See, why? Because see, in MongoDB, these documents that you store are kind of in form of an object only, isn't it? Do you see this? Right? See this. If I hit over here, so you see this data. It is kind of in a form of JSON only, right? JSON, JavaScript object, it is in a very similar form. See, these are different ways of viewing the data, right? This is one way to view the data like this. This is another way to view the data. It will just show you in form of an object kind of a thing or a JSON kind of a way. And then you can view it in a table format also. If people who are coming from SQL kind of a thing, right? SQL users, right? They will prefer this view, right? So what I'm saying is MongoDB works very well with JavaScript object, JSON, right? They work very well together. And similarly, Express, along with its capabilities of creating a server very easily, creating these middlewares, creating these route handlers, and the way how you can write code in Express makes it very, very flexible. Very flexible. And as we go ahead in this project, you will realize that how easily we write complicated code and it works like smoothly. You don't have to, rewrite the code, rewrite the logic again and again. And that has only been possible because of middleware. You write once and you can use it everywhere. This is what is the concept of middleware. So I have just added this middleware. Let me just save my file over here. Let me go back and hit my API once again and let us see if we can read that data or not. If I hit that API once again, now do you see this? What this has done is, what this express.json middleware has done is, it reads the JSON object, converts it into a JavaScript object, and it just adds that JavaScript object back to this request, right? Back to this request object in the body, right? Now my request.body is a JavaScript object. And now I can read this body properly. Do you see? Earlier we were getting undefined. Now we are getting this JSON data as in JavaScript object. And now I can do whatever I wish to. Amazing, isn't it? It has made our life so easy. Let us get our code back. First of all, let me just cancel this request. Let me just get our older code back, right? Let me just get our older code back, and now let me just tell you, this was the comment. Okay, let me just make it a comment. Now this request.body is exactly same, right? Is exactly same as this object, isn't it? It is actually what we are getting from over here, right? From the request. So what I will do is I will just replace this object by my request dot body, right? And now I will just remove this console log, and that's all we need to do. That's all, my dear friends. Now what will happen is, let me just dry run the code. This object will come, right? This JSON data will come over here. This express.json plugin, or I would say a middleware, will just read that JSON object. It will convert it into a JavaScript object, and will add that JavaScript object onto this dot body. Now I can read this body, I can get the data, I can create a new instance of a user model using this data which I have got from the API. Remember, let me just repeat it once again. I can create a new instance of this user model using the data which has been received from this API. And now this user can be saved in our database, and we can do it properly, right? This is all you need to do. Let me save the file. Let me run this sign up once again. And what do you expect to see as a response now? Will it be saved or not? This is my question. Can you give it a guess, my dear friends? I'm just about to hit this API call in 3, 2, and 1. If I send this, I got a user added successfully. And let us go back quickly to the database and check if the user was added successfully. If I refresh the page, you see that Rohit Sharma has been added successfully to our database. This is how easy it was. Now I have made this sign up API very, very dynamic, right? You can now send whatever data you wish to from here. It will come to the sign up API. It will create a new instance of a user model, right? It will create, and I will not be calling it again and again that I'm creating a new instance of a user model. I can just say it that, okay, I'm creating a new user with the data which I have got from the request. Right? I'm just creating a new user over here, and then I'm just saving that user, and I am sending back the response, user added successfully. Got it? So this is how you make the data dynamic. This was our first job for this episode, right? This was your homework. Now what you have to do is, let me just write it down. First thing is, find out the difference between JS object and JSON. Make the data request, add the express.json middleware, right, to your app. You know how to do it. Now make your sign up API, right, API dynamic to receive data from the end user, from the postman. Okay, I would say from the end user. When I say end user, it can be your browser, it can be your postman, it can be anyone outside your server. Whoever is hitting your API can send that JSON data, and that can create a user into your database, right? This is how easy it is. This is your homework. Let me save it up, right? Let me save it up. Okay, and over here, let me commit this code out, right? Dynamic sign up, right? Dynamic data in sign up API. Okay, my habit of committing the code so that you can just see the code if you wish to, right? And I have pushed the code. Now I want you to pause the video at this point of time, and please go back and to your code and implement this much and come back once again, because now we are going to create a get API. Right now we were just pushing data into the database. Now shall I read the data or not? Shall I read the data or not? Tell me, my dear friends. Okay, let us now read the data, right? And from the database, and then let us do I have added the data. Let us read the data. Then we will see how to update the data. Then we will see how to delete these users. We will see a lot more things in this episode. So come back very fast and please practice it along with me. Don't just skip the practice, because if you will not practice, nothing will happen. Okay? Take a break over here. Let's get back very soon. Welcome back, my dear friends. Let us now make the get API. And in that get API, I want to get all the users from the database, right? And I want all these users, right? Let me first of all go back and tell you the API, right? We created this sign up API. We will create these all APIs later on. But right now, I am just concerned in getting all the profiles. Basically, kind of like I'm getting I want to create a feed API, right? In the dev Tinder, I want to create a feed API, right? When I say feed API, that means suppose, I want to get all the users from the database. It is kind of like my feed, right? Once I will log in, think about the dev Tinder application. You are signing up. Now you have given your data. As soon as you land onto, as soon as you signed up, now you have to show those cards, right, of data of the new users from the database. So what I will do, I want to create a feed API which will get all the users from the database and give it back to the UI or to the postman. Okay, this is what we will make. So the job of that get API is app dot. Now how do you create the get API? You know how to create the get API. Now this is a feed API, and the request of that API is /feed, right? Get feed, right? And this feed API get all the users from the database, right? This is the job of this API. How do you make it? You know it. It's very easy. Let me go a little faster from here, right? I need to do this. I don't need to explain you anything because you already know what am I doing over here, my dear friends, right? And now I have created this API. Now let me tell you that how do you get the data from the database, right? How do you get the data from the database? First of all, you should know that whenever you want to get the data from the database, you should know which model you have to use, right? What are you getting from the database? Suppose I am getting users, so I want to query using this model, right? So what I will do is, let me just show you the reference on the documentation also, so that you know where I am coming from, right? Go to the documentation, go over here to model, right? If you'll go to model over here, you will find that what you can do, you can say model.find. Suppose if I want to find a model, right? Suppose if I want to find a document in my database, this is how I can find it. Let me just give you an example first of all, right? Let me make a different API first of all. Let me first of all show you how to find one user from the database. Then I will show you how to find all user from the database. Okay. So let us make an API to find one user, right? Or let me say get user by email, right? Find user by email. Okay. Okay. So this is my API app.get, and let's say get user. Okay. I am creating a get API /user, and then over here I want request dot response, request comma response over here. Sorry, my bad. My keyboard is not aligned properly. Just a minute. Cool. I am making a lot of typos today. Cool. So yes. So now this is the user API. I am getting the user. Now what I will do, I will read the request. How will I read? I will find the email. Email will be found on request.body.email, isn't it? Now I want to find a user in my database with this email ID. How will I find it? How will I find it? What I will do is I will call a method on this model, user model. And what methods I can find? I can say find by I can say find by ID. I can say find by ID and delete. So I don't have a user ID. And when I say this ID, this is talking about the MongoDB ID. Okay. We are talking about the MongoDB ID over here. Suppose if I have this ID, so I can just pass in that ID over here and it will just find that user by the ID. But I can use this model.find function over here. This find function takes a filter. You can just read this documentation. I'm not just diving deep into the documentation, but I'm just telling you how you can find, right? So basically I can call the find method over here, find, and now, there is a method which is known as find one also, but I'm just calling find. And over here, I need to pass a filter, right? This filter takes a JavaScript object, and I can say I want to find the user with email ID, right? As the same email ID over here, right? I should not write it email, it should be email ID, right? Email ID. Everywhere I'm using email ID, so always use the email ID word, right? And email, right? This is the email, I would say user email, right? User email. And this user email I'm just passing in over here, or you can directly write this, right? I'm just showing you how to write code, but if you want, you can directly write this over here, right? Do you remember? Now I am trying to find email with request.body.email, right? But for the sake of clarity, right? So that you are not confused, I'm writing it properly now, right? And what I told you, that whenever you are doing a DB operation, always, that's a promise, right? So always use async await, and you should always do these transactions in a try catch block. Do you remember I told you everything? So you have to find it up, right? You have to find this user in a try catch block and catch error, right? In the error segment, I can just write the same thing, right? Response.status 400, and then I will send that, okay, user not found, right? Suppose if I don't get anything, user not found nahi. So cannot make something went wrong. Okay, let's say something went wrong. I don't know, because catch will only catch these errors if something went wrong in this code, right? So something went wrong. Okay, so I will say this. Now I will find this user, and this promise will return me a user, right? This is a user. Now I will check, right? Now I will send this user back, right? Now I will send this user data back. How do you send it? I'm just sending it directly, right? This is how you send the user data back. Do you remember this? What did I wrote? I am just reading my request.body.email ID, whatever the email I'm getting, and I'm just finding that user from the database, and I'm sending that user back. And if I get some error, I am saying something went wrong. In this transaction, let us create a new get API from here. Let us create a new HTTP get API, and over here, let's say I'm making a call to get user. Now I am going to body, I'm going to raw over here, I'm adding this JSON data. In this JSON data, I have to add an email ID, and that email ID, let me request the email ID of mine, akshay@sani.com. Let us just do that, akshay@sani.com, right? akshay@sani.com. And if I hit save, if I hit send over here, what will I get? If I click on send, I got the data back. This is giving me the array of objects over here. And that array only has one object, that is with my email ID. My array has one object which is with my email ID. So basically it is trying to find out all the users with this email ID, and it is sending back the response. Got it? Did you understand that? Now suppose if the user was not found, how do you handle that case? Suppose if I request for something, Akshay, and I say XYZ, right? I'm just making a mistake in my email ID. If I do this, it will return me an empty object. But what if I have to throw an error? So what you can do, you can handle that case if your user.length, right? This user is basically the array, right? This is the array, and let's call this as users, right? For the sake of clarity, if the users of length, so basically user.find is getting you all the people with this email ID, right? And making an array of it and will send back, right? Now I am just finding if the user.length is is not equal to 1, right? Is not equal to 1, or maybe let's say if the user dot length is equal to triple equal to 0, that means I have not found anyone. So what I will do is I will send the response back, right? What I will send, I will say send the response back 404, and I will say user not found, right? This is what you will send, user not found, because the user did not found. And let's send the appropriate status code also, 404. And if everything works well, then I will send user back, right? Else I can just send my user back. Got it? So this is how we write. Now if I make this API call, it will get me back 404, user not found. The status code is 404 over here and user not found, right? And if I check with akshay@saini.com, it is giving me the, oh my god, something went wrong. Why it is saying something went wrong? akshay@saini.com, if I'm making the request to user, why it is saying something went wrong? Let us just debug it. So if the users dot length is equal to 0, else sending user, sorry, my bad, I'm just writing user over here, it should be users, right? So see, I have got this error over here, right? So it should be users. So see, our catch block activated. Got it? Now if I send it, I get my user back. So this is how you can find, and this is how you can just request, send the response back to the caller, right? Whoever is calling the API. Now, suppose if you want to find all the documents in the collection, right? Suppose if I want to get all the users, what will I do? I will do a very similar thing, right? I will do a very similar thing. First of all, let me write this try catch block first of all, right? Catch, and let me just basically write this catch block, copy paste over here, because it's one and the same thing, something went wrong. And over here, what I will do is I will find all the users. How will I find the users? I will write await, and I should write async over here, right? Async and await, and then I will call this method on user find, right? And what I will do is I will pass an empty filter over here. If you will pass an empty filter, it will get you all the documents from that collection and will send back to you, right? And now what I can do is I can just send the users back, right? If I call this, right? If I call this API, it will get all the users and it will send all the users back. This is my feed API, right? And let me just save this user API also. Save it, right? And now cancel it, right? And let's call this as get user API, right? User get, okay? Get one user by email ID basically. And now let me just duplicate this user copy and let's create a feed API over here. It is very same, right? Feed API. And now I am not passing anything over here. So let me just remove this data from here and let us click on send button. If I click on send button, see, do you see all the objects are present over here? We have got this data of all the objects, Akshay, Sachin, MS Dhoni, Rohit Sharma, all the object is coming over here. This is how you fetch all the objects, right? This is the basic get API. Now, there are a lot more methods basically that you can use. There is a method which is known as find one. What is the difference between model.find and model.find1? So, do you remember? What if, right? So what I was doing over here is I am finding a user by using email ID. What if there were two users with the same email ID? What if there were two users with the same email ID? So what will happen? Let us just create two users with the same email ID, okay? Let's go back. Let us use our API. Let us create two Rohit Sharmas, right? Send it. User added successfully. Because we don't have any restrictions, I can have the same email ID, Rohit Sharma, and the same object again. One more, right? Let me refresh the page. Cool. So now we have two Rohit Sharmas over here. Right, to Rohit Sharma. Now I am getting a user, right? Now suppose I am getting a user with the email ID Rohit rohit@gmail.com. Is it same? Right? Let us just verify it once. rohit@gmail.com. Yes. And let us send it. Now do you see it has given me two objects? But there is a method which is known as find one. It will just find you the one object and it will return only one object from the database. It will not give you an array. Right now this users is an array, right? If I have to just find one user, so what I will do is I will basically write it like this: only one user, and I will write await user.find1 email user email, right? And then I will send the response back, right? I will send the user back, right? This is how I would have written this code. If the user was not found, right? Let us just go back. Let us just call this API, right? And it is giving me empty, right? Why it is giving me empty? User email ID. I have read the email ID. I am finding one with the email ID. Okay. What did I miss it? Find one. Did I write the correctly? rohit@gmail.com. Yes, rohit@gmail.com. And then it is giving me nothing, right? It is sending me nothing. Why? Find one, await, user, response.send, user. Everything is working fine. There is some issue with my code. Let us just see. Let us go and check the date. See, I also get these errors, right? Now I am clueless, right? This is how reality works. I will not edit this portion in the video. I don't know. It should have worked according to me. But if it is not working, let us just figure out why, right? Pause the video and figure out if you can, right? But I would take some time to figure out. If I click on find one, let us just see how you pass in the conditions. So basically you do await and then you call this find one with this, and you have to call exec. Do I have to call this execute? Is it? This is something very new. See, I generally never use this find one method, but I was just showing to you. We have got some issue, right? Finds one document. Conditions are casted to respective schema types before the command is sent. Okay. I have to execute this or something, right? Let us call, right? I don't know about it. If I have to call a .exec over here, right? This is something new to me also, right? If I do this, if I send this, I'm not getting the data back because I don't know what is the issue. Request.body.email ID. I am sending the email ID over here. Am I even getting the email ID? Let us just find out this, right? This user email. Am I getting this email ID or not? Let us just log this email ID, right? How would you debug it, right? Let's just log this email ID, right? Let's just log. I am getting this email ID. If I do user.find1 email, oh my God, got the issue. Such a big typo, such a big mistake I'm doing. That's what I thought, okay? This is something very vague which is happening to me. I'm writing email over here. It should be email ID. I was writing this. It should ideally be email ID. And this is the worst thing, right? When we call, this will not throw any error or something. It will just not find it, right? So always if you are making error in this, right? If I write XYZ, it does not matter. Mongoose will ignore it. Whatever you are passing over here should match exactly how you have defined it in your models in the schema, right? If you have written email ID over here, everywhere you should use email ID, right? If you are not writing ID, never write ID. Okay, so please do that. Please, be respectful of this, right? Be mindful of this thing. So if I write email ID over here, right? Email ID over here, right? But we figured out very soon, right? And now I should call this and I'm 100% sure it should work now. Cool. I have got this, right? Now, see, if you get stuck into some such problem, right? Just go check the documentation. If the documentation is saying it should work, it should definitely work. Otherwise, you are making some error. I will not cut this section in the video because I want to keep these videos raw. I want to tell you that I also make mistake. I every day work on MongoDB. I am daily writing code in Mongo database, right? Still, I get into these issues, right? Because these are very small, basic typos which you can make. It's very common to do that. This find one method finds one document that is guaranteed and that is not an object, right? And let us also handle the case when the email ID is not present, right? Suppose if I put in rohit2@gmail.com, send it, it is giving me empty response, right? It is giving me an empty response. So what I'm saying is you can just write if my user does not exist, if not user, then send the same response, right? User not found. Send the same response. Otherwise, you can just, right? Else, you can just send this response, right? Cool. So now if you send it, if the email ID is not present, it will say for not for user not found. And if you write the email ID properly, it will find one document. And which document will it find? There were two documents. It will just return you one document. And this returned me the document of D7B, right? D7B. D7B. The first document that it finds, it returns you the oldest document, right? This is my hypothesis. I really don't know it, right? If I don't know it, how will I figure out? I will have to search it. Trust me, I don't know about it. What we know is find one gives me one document, right? It says find one gives me one document. The conditions are cast to their respective schema types, right? Whatever condition you will pass, this will be casted to the schema that you have written, right? And then before the command is sent. Note, conditions is optional. You don't have to pass in conditions if you don't wish to, right? And where do you add conditions? You can pass in these conditions as an array. What is this conditions? You can just, just figure this out. Read it up. What I'm trying to say is this is not about diving into these functions and all these things, right? Figure out for yourself. But what I'm trying to say is, always refer to this documentation. And suppose if there are multiple objects, right? Suppose if there are multiple documents with the same filter, right? If I am filtering on email ID, there are two documents. Which one will it get? Is it getting a random out of these? Is it getting the oldest one? Because what I can see from here, it is getting the oldest one, right? 5D7B. But trust me, even I don't know. I will have to figure out. But only if I'm curious, and I'm really curious. Just after this video will end, I will just figure out which one it returns. And I want you all to also be very curious, because curiosity can get you one more level deeper knowledge, which most people won't have. If you go and ask a lot of people about this, people won't know it because they never tried to find it out. Right? And similarly, even I don't know it. Trust me, I'm being very honest over here. I have never thought which document will come, but it returns you one document. It can either be this, it can either be this. Will it give you the last document? Will it give you the oldest document? This is what I can figure out, right? It is giving me D7B. That was the document which I created on the top, right? The first document. Or will it give me any random documents? If I make a API call, will it give me another document next time? No. Every time I'm making an API call, it is giving me D7B. What my assumption and hypothesis is that it is giving me the oldest document, right? Oldest one, the first Rohit@gmail that you created. But is it the case? Are you sure about it? Because I am not sure. So you can be sure only if you are curious. And this is again your homework, right? I was not planning this homework, but then this became as a homework for you. If you are doing user.find1 with duplicate email IDs, right? Duplicate email IDs. Which object will be returned? I know I have written this very badly, right? I know that I have written this task very badly, but please modify it yourself. But you understood, right? What is the homework? Find out which one will it return, right? What is it? Just read it, right? See, if if the conditions are null or undefined, Mongoose will send an empty find one command to MongoDB, which will return any arbitrary document. If you don't send anything, right? If you don't send any data, suppose if I don't send any data over here, it should give me any arbitrary, according to the definition, it is giving me user not found, right? Because I have not given any email ID, right? But over here, just a minute. If I don't send anything over here, according to the documentation, it should give me any random document, right? This is what is written over here. Let us just verify. See, read this. I am just trying to teach you how to read the documentation, right? Mongoose will send empty command to MongoDB, which will return any arbitrary document, right? If you are querying by underscore ID, use find by ID, right? Suppose if you want to query by underscore ID, use find by ID, because MongoDB might have optimized this function, right? It is recommending you to use find by ID because they might have optimized that function a lot, right? Who knows? I don't know about it, right? And suppose if you are not sending anything over here, let us just save this, try to send the data. It is giving me, see, any random document. No, it is not giving me any random arbitrary document, right? I am just calling it again and again, but it is giving me what? It is giving me the first document, right? This is how MongoDB works, but I am 100% not sure, right? Because the definition says it is giving me arbitrary. So I am not sure that it will always give me Akshay Saini also, because that is what the documentation says. Now, when I am doing practical, it is giving me the first document always, but I cannot be sure. I cannot teach my students that it will give you the first document because the documentation is very different. So what I am trying to say is, don't trust me sometimes, don't trust any other YouTuber, don't trust any other course, just trust the documentation because this is the source of truth. Today I can say that, okay, it will always return the first document, but tomorrow if something else happens, right, if some other arbitrary document is being sent to you, then you will say Akshay taught me wrong. No, the main thing is, go check the documentation for everything. I can be wrong, you can be wrong, others can be wrong. Documentation will most probably not be wrong, right? Because this is being written by the MongoDB team itself. It can also be wrong, but then, right? We can trust the Mongoose developers, isn't it? Mongoose document, whosoever is writing this document, okay? So why I'm spending all this time over here? Because I want to tell you that I also get into bugs. I also get into such issues. So don't worry. Right? Just keep reading documentation, keep practicing, keep exploring, keep learning, right? And you will get a lot of answer, and be curious. The lesson you should learn is not how to make an API call, because I am teaching you that anyways. You should also learn how to be curious, how to find out more things. Try to actually, they have not written it over here, but try to find out. Suppose if there are multiple people with the same email ID, which one will be returned if I use this method find one? Just out of curiosity. Your life will never change. And let me tell you, I have never used this function on production. Never. I had never got a chance where I would write find one, right? Generally we use find, right? Generally we use find by filters, right? We use find by filters. And let me also tell you, a very important thing is, you should never, at the first place, you should never be allowing two same email IDs into your database, right? Ideally, people with the same two email IDs should not exist in your database, right? That's how the rule should be, right? But we have not defined this rule anywhere. But I will show you in this episode itself that how can you define these rules, that email IDs should be unique. I will show you in this episode itself. Don't you worry. But for now, let me just give you the homework. Build an API to get user by API and build another feed API, right? So you have to build an API, right? Let me just give you this homework. API, get user by email, and then I will give you another API, right? I will give you another API to make. Feed API, that get all the users from the database, right? API, get all the users from the database. Okay, so this is your homework. And take a break over here, let me just commit it up, right? Get APIs, right? So take a pause over here in the video, create your get API, right? Go play with these functions, try out other functions also. Will you try out? The homework is try out this function also, get by ID, right? Try it out yourself. Create a API, right? Let me give you another homework. Create an API where you can, right? Maybe let me not write it in the homework, or let me write it. This is your homework, right? Which I am not doing it. API get user by ID, right? And use that function, right? Find by ID. Try to use all these functions, right? These all functions have one or the other use cases. Try to explore this documentation, right? There are so many functions out there which we will use, right? And we will also, I will not be showing you the use cases of all these functions, right? You can practice it yourself, you can read it yourself. This documentation is self-explanatory. It's very easy to read, and you should also, if you're finding it tough, then you should make a habit of reading the documentation, because that is the source of truth. And I will keep referring, most of the courses that will teach you will never take you to this documentation, right? But I, as a teacher, don't want to say that rely on what I am saying. Go find it in the documentation, read it up, increase your knowledge. Because where I have also learned from like random sources and documentation and practice. That is my source of learning. And I'm coming over here teaching you, making things easier for you. And I'm also citing the references. I'm also telling you that this is the documentation which you have to refer if you get stuck anywhere, or if you have to fulfill your curiosity, right? So this is what we do. Now, take a pause at this point, right? Take a pause at this point in the video, and please come back once again. Now I will show you how to update the data, how to delete a user from the database, and it will be very, very easy. Because how will you delete it? You will use find ID and delete or something like that, right? So we will delete it. Don't worry. Let's create the two APIs, update and delete, very soon, as you will come back after a short break. Okay, see you very soon. Welcome back, my dear friends. Let us now make the update API and delete API. Okay, so are you ready for that? Let us first of all make the delete API, because update API will be interesting to teach you, right? Delete API is very easy, right? It will take very less time to delete. First of all, before even creating an API, first of all, let us find out what function will I use? What query will I use to update it, right? What mongoose method will I use to delete it, right? So I can, first of all, you should know how to create a delete API, right? So I can use this method find by ID and delete, right? To delete, I can just find the user by ID and I can delete it, right? So how will we do that? Let me just write it for you, right? Now, app.delete, right? You know already, if I make a delete API, I'll have to give this delete a user. Now I will want the user ID which needs to be deleted, right? How will I get that user ID? I can just pass in the data in the JSON object, right? Let's create the object over here, and let's create a async, right? Async request response, right? And what I will do over here in my delete API is, first of all, I will just read my, I have to read the ID, right? User ID, and my user ID will be from the request dot body dot, underscore ID, right? Maybe body, and I will send the ID, or let us send the user ID, right? User ID. And now what I will do is, I will basically now make this call to find by ID and delete, right? Let's make this call. How will I make this call? Again, in a try catch block. Never forget that, right? Let us just copy catch block, right? Because I am lazy to write it again and again. Okay, you can do that. And in that try catch block, you can say that, okay, constant, or maybe, constant user is equals to await, and then you can say user dot find find by ID and delete. I will use this method, and over here I can just pass in a user ID, right? When I pass in a user ID over here, right? When I pass in a user ID over here, I have to make sure that his user ID matches the one in my schema. But in my schema, I don't have a user ID, right? I don't have a user ID. Shall I pass it like this? Because the ID field is like this. Or shall I don't pass it? How do I pass this ID over here? Now, I know that you will say, Akshay, read the documentation. Did you say that while watching the video? If this does not come to your mind, then you are not, I am not able to teach you properly. Because whenever you are confused, what should I do now? How do I pass? Should I write underscore ID? Should I pass ID directly over here? Right? Should I pass directly ID over here? How should I query this? The most important answer is, don't trust me, don't trust anyone else. Just go to the documentation, find the documentation, what it is doing, right? So basically it says that, okay, it takes the ID directly, right? It takes the parameters. The first parameter is ID over here, right? And then it also allows you options. Now go and explore if you want what all options you can do. But see, this ID is an object. It can be an object, it can be a number, it can be a string value of the underscore ID to query by, right? Value of this underscore ID. Okay, so this is how you can do it. Just use this. Let us just use this. And now what I saw, that I can directly pass in ID over here. See this shorthand. Just read this line yourself, right? You will get your answer. Issue a MongoDB find one and delete command by documents ID field. In other words, find by ID and delete ID is a shorthand for this. It is like a shorthand. You can directly write ID from here. You can directly pass in this ID over here and it will work. This is what it says, right? This is what I understand by this documentation. See, and using this is a shorthand of writing this. Basically, if you are writing this, it is a shorthand of writing this, right? It is a shorthand of writing this, right? This thing. It makes sense to write like this, isn't it? Right? It makes sense to write like this, but it will throw an error. Let me comment this code and let us use this now, right? So it is saying that you can write like this, and this is a shorthand for this, basically. And what I am trying to say is, and what I understand with my knowledge, right, of reading the documentations, that both of these will work. But this is a shorthand, so either you can use this or either you can use this, right? But you can also use this. Got it? So let us just try to use this and see, right? If the user is successfully deleted, there is no error. What I will do, I will just send the response back, response.status send, and I will say user deleted successfully, right? User deleted successfully. Deleted successfully. Cool. So user deleted successfully. Let us just go back and try to delete something. So see, there were 2 Rohit Sharma. Let us try to delete the second one. Okay. So let us just get the ID, right? How will I get the ID? Let me just copy this ID, right? I have copied this ID. Now I will go and I will create a delete API, and the delete API, the URL is the same, right? Let's go back. Let me just copy it, duplicate, right? Duplicate this and let me make it as a delete function user. And in my body, I need to pass the email ID. Now I'm not passing email ID. I am basically passing the user ID, right? I'm reading the user ID. Let's pass the user ID over here. And let us just pass it as a string, right? Let us just pass it as a string. Cool. So I passed this user ID, and shall I hit enter, right? Shall I hit the send button? Let us hit the send button. It says user deleted successfully. I have this user over here. Let me refresh the database and you will see that now we have the last user deleted. Now we don't have this user anymore over here. Okay, so this is the delete user API, right? And we have deleted the user by ID, right? We have the deleted by the user by ID. Shall let me also try and show it to you, right? Will this also work or not, right? Let us just try this hypothesis, right? We were confused, right, whether this will work or not. Let us just go back over here. I am doing the same thing. I am not doing anything. Let us just try to delete this one, right? Let us try to delete this Rohit Sharma last object, and let us replace this ID with that. And if I hit send, it says user deleted successfully. If I go back, I have 5 users over here. Let me refresh the page. Now you will get 4, and that user has been deleted. So do you see this? Both of this code works. Either you can write like this, or you can directly pass the user ID. And you know why it is happening? Because the documentation is saying it to itself. Never trust anyone. Some people will use this code, some people will use this code, and you will be confused. But the best way is to find out from the documentation. Try, make a habit to read it. Why I am teaching you to read the documentation is because I want you all to be very great developers. Got it? So this was our delete API. Hope you would have understood this. Right? Now, this is your homework. Let me add it to your homework. Create a delete user API. Okay, so I have created a delete user API. Now let's come to an interesting part where I will be updating the data of the user. Now let us create an API to update data of the user, right? Update data of the user, right? This API was to delete a user from the database. Cool. Update data of the user. Now this API will be a app.what? App.get, app.post, app.what? App.patch, right? Do you know patch? If you don't know about patch, read more about patch. Know about what is this HTTP method, patch and put. And there was a homework also where I asked you to find the difference between patch and put. Did I write it in your homework? Yes, here. Write the logic. No. This is not the case. Patch and put. Did I give you this homework? I remember I gave you this homework, right? Let me call this as patch. Okay. No, it's not written over here. I think I gave you in the earlier lecture. So let me write it down. Difference between patch and put. Right? So I'm creating a patch API over here to update the user. You can also create a put API. There is a very small subtle difference. Find it out yourself, but I will not tell you, right? You can just take this user from here. Now let us go back and create a API again, right? And this is time I'm creating a patch user. And now I will read the request, right? And what I will do is, which function will I use? Let us go back to our model. Which function will you use? Which function will you use? Tell me, right? Tell me, which function will you use? The most important answer is find by ID and update, right? Now, if you go to find by ID and update, then you will find a lot of documentation over here, right? Basically, you can do a lot of amazing things, right? Inside this, using this function, try to go read about it, right? Try to read about these options also. You can do a different type of values over here, right? You can just, you can just figure out these options. I will, if I get a time, let me just, I will just show you, right, to use one of these options also if you want, right? But first of all, let us just use this. Now find one and update, right? There is one more, there is one more method which is find one and update, and there is one method find by ID and update, right? Now what is the difference between the two? Aren't you curious about it? So read this documentation, right? What this will do. Find by ID and update. So basically what it is doing is it issues a MongoDB find one and update command by the documents ID field. Right? So basically find ID and update is equivalent to find one and update. Behind the scenes, find by ID and update and find one and update is one and the same thing. It is equivalent. Do you see this? The documentation is saying this, not me or not you, not anybody else. If you will see, there is one find one and update, there is one find ID and update. It is one and the same thing. It is one and the same thing. But the only difference is that over here you are passing an ID over here. Find one and update can also take other things, right? Other things. You can say find one and update, you can pass in email ID, right? You can pass an email ID, you can pass the username, you can pass a lot of other things to delete the user. But behind the scenes, this find by ID and update is basically calling this method behind the scenes. It is equivalent to that. No difference. You can use any, right? So we can use anything, right? So let us just use it. So how will you use it? First of all, let us just read the request and try to fetch the data, right? Data request.body, right? I will take request.body and now I will create a try catch block, try and catch over here, right? Try and catch over here to catch my errors. Cool. I have added this try catch block. Now what I will do, I will just do await and I can just say user. Then I can say find by ID and update, right? And over here, I can either pass the data like this, right? I can just pass the data like this, or I can also pass it directly, right? Also, I can pass it directly, right? How will I send the data in the in this data, right? You will get this, right? So how will I find the data? It says that it is ID, and then you will have to pass the update as the second argument. The second parameter will be update, and this is an object, right? This is an object which is the data which you have to send in, right? So what I will do is, and it also gives you examples also, right? You can also check the examples. So basically see find by ID, you can pass the ID over here, you can update and here options. Got it? So now this is how you use it. You can also find it like this ID and you can change the name if you want to, right? You can change, you can also, you can also pass in options over here. Got it? So let me just use and show it to you. You can find by ID. How will you find the ID? First of all, I will find out the ID, right? Let us just find out the ID, constant user ID. How will I read the ID? I will read the ID from the user ID, or I can read it from underscore ID also. Let's just use user ID, right? If I want, let me just show it to you the difference and complexity in this, right? And then what I will show, I will also have to pass some data over here, right? Basically, if I had to change the name, I will have to pass in like this or something like that, right? But what I will do is whatever data is coming from an API, I will replace that, right? I can just replace it. I can just put in request.body, or I can just pass in the data directly over here. This is my update. And now once I have updated it, I will just do a result.send, response.send, user updated successfully. This is all the code I have written, right? It's very easy over here. Now let me go back and test my API, right? How will I test my API? I'll have to create an API, or maybe let me just copy paste this API, right? Let me just copy, rename, or duplicate. Doing duplicate is easier, right? Cool. I don't know. It's my way of doing it, right? You can just create a new API also. So this is a patch API. Now let me go to body. Over here I am passing the user ID, and now I want to update, suppose my record Akshay Saini. I want to update some data over here. Let me just add it over here, comma, and then now I have to basically update my, suppose, first name, right? First name, and I have to say my name is Akshay y, right? I can pass in any data over here and I can just update it, right? I want to update it. How will I do that, right? How will I update it? Let me just send it, and my first name should be updated. And let me suppose I also want to change email ID. Let me just show it to you, right? Email ID. Let me update it, and let's say my email ID has changed to akshaysani@gmail.com. By the way, this is not my correct email ID, if you thought that, right? So my email ID. Now if I hit the request, what will happen? It will come over here, it will find out the user ID from here, and what it will do is it will find the data, and this data will be the whole object, right? And then it will pass in over here, and this data will be passed over here. Let us just hit this and check if this is updated. If I click on hit, it says something went wrong. Why did it say something went wrong? Tell me. Why did it say something went wrong? I was just find by ID and update, and I am just trying to find in. It said something went wrong because I am passing the wrong data over here. I cannot pass data inside the ID because I have to pass the user ID, right? So my bad, I have to change this to user ID. Now, will it work now? Tell me. Will it work now? And let me tell you, it should work now. It will work now. If I click on send, it says user updated successfully. If I go back to my database, and if I refresh the page, you will find that I have got Akshay y, and over here akshaysaini@gmail.com. Got it? This is how you update the database. Now, a problem with this approach is that, okay, I am just, when I got this request.body, let me just log it, right? Let me just show it to you what data that I get. Console.log, and I will just show you the data, right? What I got, right? It is the same data, right? That I got. Let me send it once again, and it will just give me this data. So now do you see this user ID, first name, email ID? So when I was passing the data, I passed in the whole data. But what happened to this user ID? It did not update, right? Or it did not created a new user ID in my database, right? Did it create a new user ID field? It did not created a user ID field. So what MongoDB does internally is it ignores this field, because in my schema, there is nothing like user ID, isn't it? There is nothing like user ID. So if you are trying to update a field which is not present, right? Suppose if I am passing in some other thing over here, right? Suppose if I say I am passing in a field which is known as suppose skills, right? Suppose I am passing in my skills, and I can even pass an array of strings, right? Suppose my skills are JavaScript, right? And my skills are JavaScript, and my skills are Node.js, right? Suppose if I say my skills are Node.js, or my skills are maybe, let's say, React, right? React.js. What if, suppose if I pass these send, right? Will something happen? Will these skills be stored over here? No, because if it is not present in the schema, it will not be added into the database. Any other data which is apart from the schema will be ignored by your APIs. Got it? So that's how you do it. One more thing which I wanted to teach you is that, what are these options, right? I have not told you to use options over here, right? I have never shown you how to use these options. There is basically a third parameter which is known as options over here, right? What is this options? This options, let us go and read the documentation for that, right? So this options basically is another object. Basically, you will have to pass an object over here. Now, what this will do is, it will just basically just read it, right? You can give a lot of amazing things inside it, right? So now, let me just find out one important things, right? Let me just find out. Okay, so so let us use this function only, right? Let us use this option only. So over here you can pass as an option return document, and it can either pass in before or it can pass in after, right? So basically, see, I am familiar with reading the documentation. It might take some time for you. Try to read this documentation and try to use these options also. This is your homework, okay? Take this up. Try to read this documentation, try to play with these options, but let me tell you this thing, right? So what it is trying to do is, it is saying that there is an option which is known as options.return document. So basically, you can pass in an object which says return document. And now in the return document, you can either pass in before or after, right? So what it will do is, when this API will be called or when this update will happen, so what will be returned? It will return me a user, and if I pass in before over here, by default it will return the document before the update was applied. So basically, see, right now my document is this. If I want my document to be returned right over here, so let me just console log this user over here and let me see what the database returned to us, right? And if I'm writing before over here, so it will return me the document which was before update. And if I write after over here, it will return me the document which is after update. Let me show it to you with an example. I am logging this into the console. Let me just modify the changes, okay? Let me just modify the changes, right? Let me first of all remove this data. Let me just remove this data. There is one console log over here. And over here, let me go back, update the user. Let us say first name is before, new Akshay, right? Let's say new Akshay. Right, new Akshay, and in the database I have Akshay y, right? So let me just make an API call and see what is logged in the console. If I send this, right, it will log the older version of the document, right? Now if I go to the document database, it has been updated to new Akshay, right? But over here I am getting, right, this user, this API is returning me the before, right? Before the update, the document before the update. Let me make it to after, right? Now what will happen is, suppose if I am making a new update, right? Let us call this as new Akshay, right? New Akshay. So now if I hit the send button, it will update my database. Let me refresh it. And if you will see the log, it is giving me the recent updated document after the update, right? So these options can be very handy. If you don't pass this option, it takes a default value, right? And the default value for this return document parameter is before, right? By default, it will return the document before the update was applied. So basically, if you will update it, let us just say I am updating it to back to Akshay, right? So what it will, if I hit the send, it will give me new Akshay only, because before the update, the data was this. After the update, the data was this. So I will get new Akshay over here by default. So you can tweak these options accordingly, and you can get the information accordingly however you want to, and you can use these options whenever it is required. Go and explore the other options also, right? We will explore more options as we go ahead and build some complex features. We will sometimes need to use these options also, but most of the times you don't even need these options. Some of the times you need these options, so it is upon you how to use it. You should be a good developer, you should be a good engineer, you should be able to solve problems. And suppose if there is a problem, if there is a need where you want the before or after, you should be able to read the documentation and figure out, because no teacher can teach you all these options, all these methods, everything. Nobody will teach you all of it, right? It will need a course in itself to tell you all these things. If you do cast object, then you will have to also see these options. What are the options which are being passed, right? Ignore cast errors and all these things, right? Nobody will teach you all this. What a teacher can teach you is, and what I can teach you is, go read the documentation, and I can teach you how to make an product, how to make an application, how to make our dev Tinder. That is my main goal. And whenever I am making dev Tinder, I will keep referring to the documentation and keep showing you how to refer to the documentation whenever you are building this project. And trust me, make a habit of reading the documentation. It will be your biggest superpower. Lot of people don't know how to read documentation. If you can read documentation, you can write better code. You will know that there is something like options exist. The people who watch YouTube videos run from random resources on the internet. They learn from there, right? So the teacher is never talking about these options. The teacher is never showing you the documentation. So what happens is, they don't even know. They can only write like this. They don't even know if I can pass in ID like this or not. Let me ask you a question. Can I pass the user ID like this? Can I pass the user ID like this? Can I do this? Your answer should be, let us check the documentation, right? If you will check the documentation and if you will do find by ID and update, right, you will find out that you can pass it in like this, right? See this. You can pass it like this also. You don't have to give it like this, right? You can either give it like this, right? The one which I was using it, right? Like this, or you can even give it like this, right? You can even give it like this. Got it? So let me just go back and let me keep the options over here for the sake of understanding, right? And this was the update API. There are a lot more things which I am missing in this API, right? There are a lot more things. Basically, there are no validations that we have kept in. We have not validated anything, right? Suppose if I am not passing an email ID over here, suppose if this email ID is not an email ID, I am not handling that case. I am not putting any validation, right? Suppose if I am passing a empty object over here, no validations, no checks, nothing is happening inside our database for now. Anything rubbish that you pass in, anything can be stored in the database. In the next episode, we will learn how to put in validations, how to make our database safe, right? You cannot just pass anything to the database, right? Because what code I have written is whatever you pass in over here goes into the database. I just don't want to pass anything. I want to keep the restrictions, right? Like, what is the maximum length of the first name, right? I have not put in anything, right? What if I pass a random text inside my first name? Okay, let us just, inside my first name, I can suppose if I copy all of it, right? Random text. And if I pass random text inside my first name, so big. And if I send it, it will save this also into my database, right? See this. It has saved the first name as this. There should be a maximum check. There should be a minimum length check. There should be a maximum length check. There should be email ID check. There should be validations. There should be a lot of data sanitization before putting inside the database. I am not teaching you basic level of code. I am teaching you industry standard code. These are the best industry standard practices. You will have to sanitize your data before even passing into your database, right? So how do you validate it? How do you validate your data? How do you put more strict checks into the database? Suppose if you want that there should be no duplicate email ID in your database, right? Only one user can only use one email ID, and suppose if I have registered akshayseni@gmail.com, there should not be second entry with the same email ID, right? I was able to do this, right? My database is very vulnerable at this point of time. Let us just add some strict check into the database and we will learn all of these things in the next episode. Hope you would have enjoyed this episode. In this episode, we covered a lot of amazing things. Let me give you homework before I end this episode, right? The first thing is you have to create an API to update, right? Update it, right? Let me just write the homework very soon. You will have to delete the user. Did I give you the homework already? No. Create a delete user API. Create a update user API. Update a user, right? And then also explore the mod documentation, right? Mongoose documentation specifically for models, right? For model APIs or model functions or model method, whatsoever you may want to call it as, right? This is model. Just explore all of it, right? All these methods. Go over here in the API. Click on model. These are all the methods which are there in the model. You can just explore all of them, right? Just try to, play with them and you would understand the importance of reading the documentation. Try to play with options, right? Let me give you one more options. What are options, right? Options in a model dot find one and update API or method, right? Explore more about it. And I will also give you one more homework, right? Interesting homework about it. That, okay, you have to create an API which updates the user, right? Which updates the user, update the user API with email ID, right? So over here, I should pass in an email ID and it should update the user data with reference to email ID. Right now, I'm doing it using user ID. I want it to happen using email ID, right? This is your another homework. I have given you enough homeworks, right? Please, please, please go ahead and do the homework. It will be very, very helpful for you, right? To update, do the homework. It will be very, very helpful for your learning journey. I want you all to do the homework. And this is the end to this video. One request I have to please practice it. Practice the code along with me. Just watching the video will not make you a great developer. You have to practice the code, explore the Mongoose documentation, explore the Express documentation, and then you will have to also push your code to GitHub. Just coding in localhost will not work it. Push your code to GitHub, maintain a repository, make your notes, try to make it handwritten if possible. If not handwritten, use Notion or use other notes, any digital note taking application that you use. If you don't have an application, you can even create notes in a simple Google Doc or in a simple MD file. Why can't you create a markdown file in your GitHub repository itself and put down notes over there? But keep making notes, that it is very, very, very important for the learning, right? And please keep doing that. That's all in this video. I would request you to please, if you're liking this video, if you're liking this series, please share a word about us on social media to your friends, to your family, and to all the social media network that you have. It does not matter if you have 1 follower or 100 follower or 1000 follower or 10,000 follower, but please, if you will share a post about us, that matters a lot. And please tag me if you write any post on LinkedIn or Twitter or any other social media. I am available everywhere. And one more request is, please join the Discord server of Namaste Node.js, right? And please help other people over there and get help. Suppose if you are stuck somewhere, if you don't find anything, just help other people, get help from there and make it a great community. Connect with other Node.js developers and let's create a great community over there, right? So that's all in this video. Hope you are liking it. Please, last request is to please share about us on social media, share about Namaste Node.js. It will help us reach more and more people, right? That's all in this episode. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one very soon. Bye-bye.